I once met a therapist who was fully booked with 8 clients a day. No website, no social media, no adverts of any kind. And he told me the secret was only make them half better. Now, before anybody loses their mind, let me explain. When I first started out as a therapist, I probably rushed into it a little bit. I dived into it. I quit my job and just thought, right, from now on, I'm going to be a therapist. I'm going to be a shiatsu therapist. And it was probably very rash of me to do so. And I remember I appeared in a local newspaper that featured me in a newspaper called the Dewsbury Reporter. And from that, this man emailed me. He emailed me. And he basically said, look, I'm a therapist. I do acupuncture. I've got some old Chinese medicine books. Would you like them? So I was like, yeah, cool, let's meet up. So we met up at the train station. He gave me these books. He asked me how things were going. I said, oh, not bad. You know, it's early days. It's hard to say. And then a few weeks passed and he emailed me and he says, would you like to go for lunch sometime this week and we'll have a chat and run some ideas by you? And I said, well, I'd love to, but I was genuinely skint. I couldn't afford lunch. I could barely afford a cup of coffee if I were lucky. He said, don't worry about that. I'll pay. Let's meet up. Let's see how things go, right? So we met up in this Chinese restaurant and we're eating and he explained to me that, you know, he doesn't have any social media. Now, this was early days social media. Twitter were quite new. Facebook were new. There were no Instagram. At this point, I'd not found my way onto YouTube. TikTok definitely didn't exist. But he was telling me that, you know, he didn't have any social media. He wasn't on Facebook. He wasn't even on the old social media sites like GeoCities, if you remember them. All he had was an email and a landline. And yet this guy was fully booked. He'd do 8 clients a day, tell me, every day. And he never needed to do any kind of advertising. He was that busy. And then he asked me, he said, Shane, how are you getting on? And I said, well, the problem I have is I get some new clients, maybe 3 or 4, seem to start within the first sort of week together. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, they stop coming because they're better. And he sat there staring off into the distance, drinking his green tea. And then all of a sudden, after like what felt like forever, he looked at me and he said, the trick is only ever make them half better. And I laughed at that. I thought he was joking. I don't know if he's joking. Even to this day, I look back and I chuckle and I don't know if he was joking or not. But I think what he means by it is consistency. You've got to be consistent. And that's where I'm going to go with this, right? Now, one of the things I found that works is you've got to turn up. And you've got to begin by lowering your expectations a little bit. So what I mean by that, if you have a goal in mind to do 24 clients a week, say, and if you then try and fill 24 appointments a week and all you're getting is 1, 2, 3 appointments, you're going to become quite disheartened quite quickly. Sorry, I've got a bit of a sore throat today. So you're going to become quite disheartened quickly. So what you're best off doing is lowering that to maybe 10 appointments. Aim to fill 10. And then when you can fill 10, and every week you're filling between 8 and 10, rise the bar a little bit. Shoot for 12. And then once you're doing between 10 and 12, rise it again. Shoot for 14. And keep doing that and increasing it. But start off small. Maybe you only want 8 a week. Start off with 8 and slowly rise the bar. Now the next thing is the biggest advice possible. right? A lot of people say they're just going to manifest clients. And that's fine. I'm a massive believer in manifestation, but you've got to do it correctly. You can't just create space in your diary and then expect it to fill, right? And not be there. Do you see that? A lot of therapists do that. I see this all the time. They say they're going to do 12 clients a week, right? And they're manifesting 12, but they haven't created the space for them. Create the actual space. So if you want, say, 4 clients on a Monday between the hours of 10 and 3, block off that time in your diary and then be there, right? Be there in your treatment room. Be there in your space, right? Even if nobody else comes, be in your space. Because if you can't be in that space, how can you expect anyone else to be? And this was key for me when I began. I used to turn up at this health centre and it didn't matter if I didn't have anyone in. I'd sit there and I'd do other work. Likewise, I used to work up at a boxing gym and it didn't matter that I didn't have anyone in on a Wednesday. I still used to go up on a Wednesday because that way people knew Shane's there on a Wednesday, I can go have a chat with him. Shane's at that health centre Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, I can go have a chat with him, right? And while you haven't got any clients, this is the perfect time to learn about social media. It's the perfect time to learn about marketing. It's the perfect time to create posts for Instagram, for Facebook, time to work on your actual website, right? That is your time that you do these jobs while you haven't got clients, right? And not only that, you can use that time to follow up on clients. Ring them up, see how they're doing. Maybe you had a client a month ago and you've not seen them. Well, you've got 4 hours spare. Ring them up, see how they're doing. Send them a message saying, oh, just thinking about you. How have you been since your last session? Because the thing is, in them early days of a therapist, of starting your business, it's not about fixing people. I use that term loosely, or healing people. For one, I don't believe we do that. I feel like we just support people. But it's actually, them early days is about creating connections and creating trust with potential clients and people in the village or town or the community that you live in, right? And depending on who you target, depends, what that trust level is going to be. Now, I found it quite easy at first, and I think this is because I was in a health centre, to get quite a lot of female clients. And at one point, I probably had 90% female clients. But then when I started working at the boxing gym and I started gaining the trust of the boxers and the bodybuilders, then slowly that shifted. But it takes time. You've got to build up that trust. And I was just thinking about this, and I think about trust and getting yourself known. And I was thinking, if I started again from scratch, I know exactly what I'd do, and I'm going to share that. And this could be the biggest secret to launching your therapy business. Just have a quick drink of tea. Keep you on edge, maybe. So, if I were to move, like right now, around this town and village, and villages around, I'm quite well known. Not tooting my own trumpet or anything like that, but, everybody that's been tends to say, oh, I know so-and-so comes to you, or so-and-so, or, I know 2 or 3 people that have recommended you. But if I were to move now to a town where nobody knew I was, so I'm starting from scratch, like you might be, what I'd do is I'd do a lot of free treatments. And you might be thinking, that's crackers, but look, hear me out. People need to know who you are, right? So there's two ways people can like learn who you are. They either learn through adverts, social media, right, and marketing, or they learn through word of mouth. And the quickest way you can build trust is word of mouth. Other people physically coming to you, right? So if it were me, and say I'm renting somewhere, and say it's £100 a month, right? I would say to that clinic, I will give all the clients there that you've got that come to your clinic a free treatment. Because like, if somebody came to me, if a therapist wanted to come and work at my clinic, and they said, look, I'll give all your clients a free treatment just to get my name out there, I could send an email out that goes to 1,000 people and say, look, so-and-so started and they're going to give you a free treatment, right? So they all come. Maybe not all 1,000 of them, but you get a lot coming over, right? And then the next thing you say to them is, look, you've had one free treatment. If you go on Google and you leave me a 5-star review, I will give you another free treatment. That acts in two ways. Then people go off and they give you a 5-star review, which long term is going to build up your reputation. But not only that, they then go off and tell their friends and family and say, oh, right now, Shane, who's just started at such and such clinic, is offering free treatments. And it doesn't matter whether it's like, if you're working like in a clinic like here, or you've set up your own clinic and then you're putting out on social media, free treatment, people share that. And yeah, probably 70% of them might be just freeloaders, if you like, that have just come for that free treatment and you'll never see them again. But them people you might not never see again, the next time their shoulder hurts, they might say, oh, you know what? I bet Shane can help with that. Who's that? Shane, right? He came to the village about 6 months ago. And the next thing, they're on your website and they're booking in. So if it were me, starting off from scratch, I'd do maybe a month or 2 months of free treatments until I started getting traction. And then once I started getting traction, I'd obviously cut that off because you don't need it then. But I think offering free treatments, and I've kind of seen it, I know a therapist who's done it, right? Although he denies it. But I know for a fact he did. And he's got hundreds upon hundreds of Google reviews. Not only that, he's charging premium prices and is always full. He has absolutely smashed it out of the park. So I know that technique does work. So if you're a new therapist, give that a whirl. And if you're looking at becoming a therapist, or you're looking for further advice on being a therapist, I do offer a little bit of coaching. There is a link down below where you can find one-on-one support. Other than that, make sure you're subscribed and keep checking out these videos for more useful information. Goodbye for now.